Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Nehami and these are the headlines. The group of 7 rich countries have condemned the military coup and the subsequent violence leading to the killing of over 760 people in Myanmar. In a tweet after attending the meeting in London, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the forum urged Myanmar's military to restore democracy. He said the G7 also called on other countries to reconsider economic ties with the military junta. Afghan officials say the Taliban have launched a huge offensive across the country following a missed US deadline to withdraw troops. They said security forces have pushed back the Taliban by launching airstrikes in Helmand and other provinces, but fighting continued. The Defense Ministry said over 100 Taliban fighters have been killed in Helmand since Monday. It did not provide details on casualties among Afghan security forces. India has become the world's second country after the US to register more than 20 million COVID-19 cases. In Pakistan, authorities have decided to tighten restrictions on Eid holidays, including a ban on tourism. The country recorded 161 deaths in a day, though the number of daily infections and positivity ratio declined after nearly a month. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.2 million lives and has infected over 153 million people. Those are the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. The group of 7 rich countries have condemned the military coup and the subsequent violence leading to the killing of over 760 people in Myanmar. In a tweet after attending the meeting in London, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the forum urged Myanmar's military to restore democracy. He said the G7 also called on other countries to reconsider economic ties with the military junta. He added that the forum will continue to promote accountability for the regime. Myanmar has been rocked by mass protests since the military seized power in February and detained elected leaders. Afghan officials say the Taliban have launched a huge offensive in the country after the May 1 deadline for the complete withdrawal of the US troops passed. They said security forces have pushed back the Taliban by launching airstrikes in Helmand and other provinces, but fighting continued. The Defense Ministry claimed to have killed over 100 Taliban fighters in Helmand since Monday as foreign troops withdrawal continues. It did not provide details on casualties among Afghan security forces. Well, the Taliban said they killed a number of Afghan soldiers in Balkh and Paktia provinces. Pakistan's Foreign Office has summoned the Indian Charge d'Affaires to lodge a protest over India's ceasefire violation on Monday. In a statement, Pakistan's Foreign Office said the Indian forces violated the ceasefire in the Charba sector of the working boundary and resorted to unprovoked fighting. It urged the Indian side to respect the ceasefire agreement. The Foreign Office termed it the first grave violation of the ceasefire by India after an understanding was reached between the two countries in February this year. Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa has reached Saudi Arabia on an official visit. According to military's media wing, General Bajwa will hold meetings with high-ranking officials during the visit. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan is also scheduled to visit Saudi Arabia later this week. Khan is visiting the kingdom on the invitation of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. In Iraq, at least 2 rockets landed on the Ain al-Assad airbase, which hosts U.S. and other international forces but caused no casualties. It's the second attack targeting U.S. interest in less than 24 hours after 6 rockets were fired towards Balad airbase, wounding a foreign contractor. On Sunday, 2 rockets targeted an airbase at the Baghdad airport, housing U.S.-led coalition troops. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for either attack. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby said the latest rocket attacks in Iraq show the U.S. mission is still dangerous. The U.S. says North Korea needs to decide if it wants to engage diplomatically for the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. This comes a day after Pyongyang warned the U.S. of retaliation to what it called Washington's hostile policy.
At a press conference in London, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Washington will see what North Korea actually does in the coming days. Speaking about Russia, Blinken said the U.S. wants a more stable relationship with Moscow. But he reiterated Washington's desire depends on how aggressively the Kremlin decides to act. The diplomat also pointed out that the U.S. does not aim to contain or hold China down. However, he added the West will defend the international rules-based order from what he called subversive attempts by any country. Meanwhile, China's envoy to the UN, Yang Jun, said Beijing hopes the U.S. will emphasize more on dialogue rather than pressure.
Kyrgyzstan's Prime Minister Ulugbek Meripov has signed a draft law to grant special status to its region bordering Tajikistan. The draft has now been sent to the parliament for approval. During his visit to the Batkan region, Meripov also announced the rebuilding of wrecked homes and other incentives. The proposed law will provide the local authorities with the power to govern, control and make certain decisions themselves. Last week, nearly 50 people were killed during the armed conflict between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan over the Batkan region. Lebanon and Israel are resuming U.S.-mediated talks on a dispute over their Mediterranean sea border. The dispute has held up hydrocarbon exploration in the potentially gas-rich area. Lebanon and Israel took part in indirect talks to discuss demarcation last year, but they stalled after Lebanon demanded a larger area where Israel had given exploration rights to a Greek firm. Washington called the resumption of the talks as a positive step towards a long-awaited resolution. Lebanese politicians hope that commercially viable hydrocarbon resources will help lifting the debt-ridden country out of its worst economic crisis in decades. Egypt has signed a deal with France to buy 30 Rafale fighter jets. This comes after Dassault finalized a €2.5 billion agreement in January for the sale of 18 Rafale jets to Greece. In a statement, the Ministry of Defense said the deal will be financed through a loan to be repaid over at least 10 years. But it did not disclose the value of the deal or further details. French authorities were not immediately available for comment. The Human Rights Watch says France is encouraging ruthless repression in Egypt by signing the contract. The Mexican president has promised a full investigation into the causes of the metro overpass collapse. In a news briefing, Andrés Manuel López Obrador said that the probe must be done quickly and with transparency. At least 23 people were killed after an overpass carrying metro train cars partially collapsed in Mexico City. Officials said 65 people were also injured after the bridge fell onto the cars on the road below. Mexico City Mayor Claudia Sheinbaum termed the incident a terrible tragedy. Meanwhile, Pakistan has extended condolences over the loss of lives in the metro train accident. India has become the world's second country after the US to have more than 20 million COVID-19 cases. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.2 million lives while infecting over 153 million people.
India recorded over 357,000 new cases and more than 3,400 deaths overnight. Country's opposition leader, Rahul Gandhi, has called for a nationwide lockdown. Over in Latin America, in a sigh of relief, Brazil's daily death toll fell below 1,000. The country is now close to signing a second contract with Pfizer-BioNTech for another 100 million doses of its vaccine. Meanwhile, Mexico hopes to finish vaccinating its entire population against COVID-19 by April 2022. In the U.S., the 7-day rolling average of new cases has fallen below 50,000 for the first time since October. Air travel in the U.S. hit its highest mark in more than 13 months, as nearly 1.67 million people were screened at the country's airport checkpoints on Sunday. Meanwhile, Florida lifted all restrictions, citing the effectiveness and availability of vaccines. Canada has recommended the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine for people aged 30 years and over, despite blood clotting fears.
Pakistan has recorded another 161 deaths from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the nationwide death toll has risen to 18,310. The ministry said over 3,300 people contracted the virus overnight. It said the positivity ratio has declined to 8.98%. The caseload has topped 837,000, out of which over 733,000 have recovered. There are more than 86,000 active cases in the country. According to the government data, more than 2.7 million people have been vaccinated in the country. In Afghanistan, at least 30 people have been killed as heavy rains and flash floods hit Herat province. Authorities say a woman and 4 children are among the victims in the Adraskan district. Herat's authorities said floods have also destroyed dozens of hectares of land and killed cattle. They said the neighboring districts of Obey and Karokh have also been affected. Officials added that scores of households have been evacuated and rescue operation is underway. In August, flash floods claimed more than 150 lives in 13 Afghan provinces. The EU has condemned the recent violence during street protests in Colombia over a proposed tax reform. The bloc called upon the Colombian security forces to stop the escalation of violence and avoid use of force. The protests began last week, demanding the withdrawal of a tax reform proposed by President Ivan Duque's administration. The reforms, which would have increased taxes on low and middle-income groups, have been shelved, but protesters have called for fresh demonstrations despite the withdrawal of the reforms. At least 19 people have been killed and more than 800 wounded in several days of clashes. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. China has taken over the presidency of the UN Security Council for the month of May 2021. In a press briefing, China's envoy Zhang Jun stressed the need of upholding and practicing multilateralism. Zhang said conflicts in Africa account for more than half of the situations on the Security Council agenda. China will convene a high-level open debate on the 19th of May to address the root causes of conflicts in Africa. The Security Council's presidency rotates every month among its 15 members. Beijing last held the body's presidency in March 2020. Bill and Melinda Gates have parted ways and filed for divorce after 27 years of marriage. The couple announced that on their Twitter profiles separately. They said they will continue to work together for the Bill and the Melinda Gates Foundation. The two said they do not believe they can grow together any longer as a couple. A joint petition for the dissolution of marriage was filed in King County Superior Court in Seattle. It stated that the marriage is permanently broken. The petition, which says the couple have no minor children, as the youngest of their 3 offsprings recently turned 18. In Colombia, bees are enjoying their new digs in Barbosa, where tiny hotels provide rest after a busy day pollinating. The hexagonal structures are filled with a variety of bamboo canes and allow bees of all shapes and sizes. More in this report.
Colombia is the world's second most biodiverse country and boasts nearly 550 varieties of bees. As elsewhere in the world, the bees in the South American country are threatened by human activity. To protect the bees, the local metropolitan authority has made bamboo homes.
It's like a hotel because they're going to have a quiet moment in their room, which is one of these bamboo straws, before setting off again. They can either return to the same hole or find another, and so on. And we keep on changing it. We'll clean it. If this were a regular hotel, I'd be one of the people cleaning the rooms.
The homes are built from wood and acrylic roofs to protect the bees from rain. They aim to protect species found in 10 municipalities of the metropolitan area of the Abura Valley.
Actually, these hotels for bees are small spaces. Spaces that require a minimum infrastructure that can be made with recyclable material. A space that seeks to generate an environment in which they can coexist, have healthy protection. We must recognize that globally bees are being negatively impacted and they are losing more spaces every day.
The use of pesticides and fertilizers is harmful to bees, so the tiny structures offer them natural spaces for survival.
A famous New York City restaurant known for its signature meat-based and seafood dishes is going vegan. Details in this report.
11 Madison Park's most iconic dishes, like the sea urchin and lavender glazed duck, will not be available when it reopens on 10th of June. Instead, a 3 Michelin-starred restaurant, widely considered one of the best, will be offering a plant-based menu. The restaurant's chef and co-owner, Daniel Hum, has announced all the dishes will be made from land or marine vegetables. Ingredients would also include fruits, legumes, fungi, grains, and other plant-based diets. Hum says animal products were simply not sustainable. He says that although the vegan menu is risky, he wants to reinvent fine dining. The restaurant closed to the public last year when the world shut down due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
With New York City reopening in July, about 100 citizens took to a Zumba class in Central Park to dance out the prolonged stress. This report has more.
New Yorkers set their eyes on dealing with the remainder of the pandemic and preparing for the post-coronavirus life. A week after the pandemic had arrived, the Zumba instructor Sol Alberion started teaching classes online from her living room. But she quickly realized she missed seeing her students in person. As soon as groups workout became an option, she took her roller speaker and organized the first session in Central Park.
I have the most touching stories that you can imagine. I have people fighting cancer. I have people that are unemployed, people that lost everything in the pandemic and even before the pandemic. So when they leave the class, it's like I just feel good with myself. I have the moment that I was able to just be happy, find joy.
The class became popular very quickly. One of the participants, Nam, who had taken the Zumba class for 8 years before the pandemic, he says the phrase like, "This class, it keeps me sane," is an understatement.
I think there was a lot of isolation that happened for me personally, for my friends, for even my roommates who couldn't see other people except the 3 of us, right? So it was incredibly isolating, and coming here, seeing people, interacting with people from 6 feet away, wearing masks, you know what? It felt more normalizing.
About 100 participants show up on weekend mornings and dozens on weekday nights. 25 people worked out with Alberion on a day when it was 15 degrees outside and snowing.
It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. In other business updates, the Wall Street stocks have dropped at open following a strong start to May, with technology stocks experiencing the biggest selling pressure. This led Nasdaq Composite to trade down by nearly 2% lower at open. Meanwhile, the S&P 500 opened nearly 1% down. The Dow Jones Industrial Average also traded more than 0.5% down at open. Meanwhile, the oil prices have risen as more US states eased lockdowns, helping to offset concerns over fuel demand in India as COVID-19 cases soar. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that is all for now. With the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.